Let's spar.
Ooh, a classic.
All right. Now, as you know, in this segment, well, it's just in yes to everything, you spoke against your own conscience. So I made
Hmm.
you say the stuff you actually disagree with. But in this segment, you can choose either to speak for or against your own conscience. So you can go first,
All right.
where if the first speaker speaks their conscience and the second speaker has to refute for 1 minute. You're going to build up your case for 1 minute uninterrupted. I will refute it for 1 minute uninterrupted. And then the third minute is the open round. Should human beings have microchips linked directly to their brains? So
Oh
this is
my.
an, I guess, an extemporaneous sparring match, prompted by Elon Musk's recent declaration that
Hmm.
he wants to put microchips in our brains as early as 6 months from now. And so
Wow.
we know that Elon Musk likes to work fast. And so,
Yes.
but is this something we should do fast? Because
Ooh.
he himself said he's going to wait and see how it works before he decides to do it to his own brain. But this technology is here; it exists already. It helps. They have been planting, again, I guess, digital microchips in the membrane of people's brains. I don't know how it works. I'm just a debate coach, but it helps blind people translating from voice to text, things like that.
Hmm.
So it's been already done for medical use. But should we have microchips implanted in our brain randomly, just so that we can become hybrid with technology? And
No. To be very clear, I do not think that human beings should have microchips linked directly to their brains at random. To begin, I think that if we were focusing specifically on disability and about the restorative power of microchips, this would be a different debate. But if we're talking about microchips as simply allowing people to have these sort of cyborg capacities to increase their, who knows, their mental functions, their physical functions, I don't think that this is responsible for a few reasons. One, I think that the companies who are putting these microchips into people's brains would have an exorbitant and undue amount of power that they are not accountable for. And secondly, I think that the disparities that this could create in terms of human ability is profoundly unfair. I think that if these microchips were available to people who could afford them and that they could in turn create greater capacities and greater abilities, then I think it would create a disparity among human beings and create a sort of two-tier society that is unsustainable.
okay, well, in terms of companies having being unaccountable and being too powerful, I think that's already the case. And
Mhm.
so, maybe having a microchip planted in our brains will kind of even out the playing field and give each person kind of bigger abilities, faster processing speed, and more chance to thrive in the workforce. I'm not sure if that's going to make a difference, but in terms of the disparity between people and having maybe widening the chasm between the rich and the poor, is this going to become a luxury for the rich? Well, I think if it was adopted as a governmental kind of strategy, or then the government could end up paying for this, and it could be a tax covered expense that and all human beings would be in on it. I think in that case, if everybody's doing it, I mean, a fish doesn't know it's in the water, and if everybody has got this microchip planted in our brain, doesn't that somehow kind of even out the playing field?
I think no. You said that companies already have this sort of undue power over our lives and that they're not accountable for it. Um, but this only makes that worse. Just because it's bad now doesn't justify making it worse in the future. And we talk about this idea that this could elevate our capacities to the point that we'd be able to challenge these companies. But if we're
Well,
so
but I was
dependent on their
thinking that,
product,
right now we are so susceptible to being, I guess, scammed and manipulated. But if we have a super fast thinking ability, or can't we just cut through the BS and understand when companies are out to get us? And wouldn't that help us sort of?
well, I think if they can take it away at any time, then maybe not, you know? If our capacities are dependent on a product that is controlled by another independent company that could be removed from our brains at any time, then we don't really own that capacity to begin with.
Okay, that was super
Ooh,
hard. I
that
don't,
was a tough one, yeah.
I don't like.
Tougher for
I
you
don't
than
want a
me.
microchip in my brain. That's
No, me
crazy to
either.
me. But um, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? I guess you wouldn't be the first in line to let that happen.
Maybe not, but then again, I wonder if people were having this conversation about wearing glasses way back in the day, that this is now something you're going to be dependent on, and
Yeah,
it's going
but
to
is it
enhance our
possible, just
abilities.
like AI chat right now is being
Yeah.
thrust on us whether we like it or not? And so is it possible that, you know, if you don't sign on to this, that you're going to be left in the dust? And if
And
people
I
are
think that's the
evolving with
scary
this
part.
amazing advantage, and then the rest of us who choose not to have it or can't have it are going to become kind of like a lesser primitive type of human, or won't evolve in the same way? Are we going to kind of fall off by the wayside,
I
perhaps?
hope not. It's like they say with performance enhancing drugs in sports, right? That as soon as you allow one person to do it, then it creates such a disparity that either everybody's allowed to do it or nobody can do it. And so
That's
I
kind of what
think,
happened with the Lance
yeah,
Armstrong story, that
mm,
he said that, yes, I'm guilty of doing the performance enhancing drugs, but there's no way I could ever have won any Tour de France without doing
without
that.
it. Yeah.
And he said everybody in cycling at that time was doing it, and there's just no conceivable way that somebody who wasn't doping is going to win. In any case, excellent discussion. Now I feel
Mhm.
I'm going to have to do some editing on that. That was terrible for me. I
No,
didn't know
no,
what to
no.
say at all.
No, I bet you did
Okay,
well.
next question.
All
Hopefully you'll
right.
choose the hard side.
Deal.
Okay. Okay, this one is about schools providing Oculus headsets.
Mm.
Using Oculus headsets in the classroom. So I'm not going to say anything about it. We can talk about it within our conversation. So go for it. You can be the first speaker.
I'm gonna. What side would you like? Because this is one that I am a little ambivalent on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let me restart the clock. In that case, I'll go first.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm kind of ambivalent about it too. It's such an unknown,
Yeah,
but okay, my
I can
feeling
see
is
ups and
no.
downs.
I don't think this is a good
No.
idea. And I think,
Okay.
we just came out of a pandemic where we were forced to go online and try a different way of doing school in a digital way, in the digital space. And I think, for all intents and purposes, it was a debacle. I mean, getting just when we all came back together in real life in the classroom, it was such a relief for teachers and students, and we felt like learning was taking place again. And a lot of people felt that the digital learning, maybe if it is possible, if it's going to supplant in-person learning, and we're just not there yet. And I think, providing an Oculus in the classroom, first of all, it's going to create a huge expense. And we're already cutting corners in every which way in education. And who's gonna pay for this, and all the problems that's going to come out of it? And why after coming together and finally in real life are we going to then sit together in real life and then go into a digital space? It just seems to make no sense.
Well, I argue that there are two big advantages to what's proposed here in the resolution. Firstly, this is saying that schools would provide Oculus headsets to students. And why do I think that this is such a big advantage? Well, because there are students in school systems right now who have access to this technology, and then there are students who don't. And we know that even if Oculus isn't the future for everything, this is not to say that every lesson should be taught on Oculus. This is something that can really enhance the learning experience. You can't take your kids on a field trip to the moon, right? But through the powers of virtual technology and virtual reality, maybe you can. And under the status quo, there are students with the resources to have that, opportunity. Then there are students who don't. And by putting this into the school system, then it would even out that opportunity. Exactly. And secondly, I don't think that it's an all or nothing. I think that having the option to teach lessons on Oculus headsets
Well, as you
creates.
know, I am a fan of the Oculus, and
I
I,
can
I do
see.
spend some time in the VR world. However, having an Oculus, um, having that kind of digital space, it does improve on Zoom learning, because you can
Mhm.
tap people on the shoulder, and it kind of brings a more of a real life element to learning. But there's nothing like face to face learning. And I think the more opportunity we have to do face to face, the more we should embrace it, because it brings out the humanity in everybody. It allows everybody to witness each other's micro expressions, to know if your student is scared, can I push them? In the Oculus world, it's just sort of, there's none of that. We just expected to do things, without any, attention to that.
True, but I think there are trade-offs. you know? So maybe in Oculus, we don't get those little moments of human connection, but in Oculus, you can go to the moon, you can go to the bottom of the ocean, you can go and travel the world. And so don't we want students to have the option to have both, to be able to have those human connections in person, but also have these incredible VR opportunities?
Yeah. When I did this question in class, somebody said, if we were learning about volcanoes, we could travel inside of a volcano in the
Yes.
Oculus, and we could have the whole class and the teacher explaining. And I thought, that's just brilliant. I think you're right. And
Yes.
often in debating, we have to take these polarized views, but you're right about it would be nice to have a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
in-person and then the Oculus in order to visit the volcano.
Exactly.
All right. We got one more.
Okay.
And this next one, it comes with a little video preamble. So let's watch
Mm.
this.
Yesterday, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted to approve a policy that allows for the use of weaponized robots to use deadly force by the San Francisco Police Department.
All right.
This one I think I have an opinion on.
I think her expression says it all.
Why that a weaponized robot?
Obviously, I have a strong opinion, but I have a feeling I'm going to be
I think
speaking
the
against my
breakfast was
conscience.
the same.
Okay.
Robo-Cops are a good idea.
All right, you go first this time, Megan.
Okay. This one I don't think will be too much of a decision. I think that even the most basic level of common sense tells us that no, RoboCops are not a good idea. Why? Well, I feel that everyone's gut reaction should be enough. But if we were to analyze this a little bit further, what is the danger of a robot police officer who is able to use lethal force? Firstly, robots are products of the people who create them. You know, we write our biases into robots, and then robots don't have the empathy or decision-making power to evaluate their programming by themselves. And so what happens when the biases that we already know exist in policing are then coded into robots who can't, think critically about what they've been taught? I think that's tremendously dangerous. And who do we hold accountable when something goes wrong? If a robot uses lethal force against someone in a way that was unjustified, do we send the robot to jail? How do we create a sense of justice?
Well, you're assuming that the AI will be a self-thinking or critical thinking kind of replacement for a human being, but I see it more as kind of like a robo dog that has a surveillance camera. It is still armed, but there's a human being on the other end making the decisions. And so that we're talking about San Francisco here. In America, everybody's armed. So the police are terrified when they arrive at well, God knows what's going to be inside of that warehouse or that building. So do we want to put their lives on the line or let the robo-dog go in there and check it out? And perhaps in this way, police officers, who usually shoot first and ask questions later, can now surveil the situation, maybe de-escalate it, and lives will be saved.
I see what you're getting at with the idea of RoboCops as more of like a surveillance mechanism. But the fact is, these would be so tremendously expensive that I have to question, why are we investing in robots that can use arm technologies or even just walking,
Well,
body
I would
cameras?
argue that it's a huge investment to train police officers and a police fleet. And if we keep losing them to death and paying for their funerals, maybe this expense could kind of supplant that expense.
Well, I would suggest that the real expense that could be supplanted here is by investing in preventative programming so that not only are you not losing police officers' lives, but you don't need a RoboCop who is standing in the way of that. I think that it's a much better investment to prevent police death by investing in mental health services, for example, than it is to invest in like a walking camera.
It's not only about the issue of their physical safety, but also police officers are getting traumatized and having PTSD from being the first on the scene, let's say, of a serial killing or a murder suicide. And so perhaps sending in a robot to assess the situation, and then it can be determined that a mental health expert needs to be brought to the situation, or a social worker or something like that. All right, time's up.
Yes.
Sorry, I cheated a little
No,
bit.
no, that's all right. You had a tough side. You earned it.
So RoboCops, I mean, my goodness, it seems like all the things that used to be the sci-fi futures when I was a
Yes,
kid is
microchips and
now happening
RoboCops
in the
and
world. Do you think
ay ay
that's
ay.
you think it's definitely a bad idea, right? You're
That's a
sticking.
hard no. That is a hard no for me. But it's true, all of those topics, it's eerie because it does sound like something ripped straight out of a sci-fi novel or a dystopian,
Well,
movie.
and also like we have a track record of, I mean, the United States anyway, of sending militarized drones into
Yeah,
areas
all
and
sorts of stuff. They talk
messing
about
up big
tanks.
time and causing all sorts of problems, and
Yes.
it's not accurate and killing wedding parties and families and things like
Hmm.
that. So and now they're saying, oh, since it failed in other places, now we can unleash the same technology on our own citizens in this country. And I don't know, it just seems like a
It's too
disaster way.
crazy.